Hello, this is Tony Blazer for the Motocross Vault presented by Blinzall. If you're in the market for some high-quality racing oil for your two-stroke or four, make sure you go to blinzall.com and use our discount code VAULT20 to save 20% at checkout. Thank you for all the support. Hello and welcome back to the Motocross Vault. My name is Tony Blazer, and what this video is going to cover is a look back at Suzuki's 1991 RM125. Now, the early 90s were a good era for the RM125. This machine had come out really strong in the mid-70s when it was first introduced in 75, and then 76 through maybe 82, 83. It really was probably the best 125 you could buy. They had a really great run of RM125s. They won, I think, 9 or 10 straight 125 world titles. Really successful machines, the first full floaters, game-changing bikes. And in the mid-80s, they kind of had a lull and kind of went down. 86 was really not a great year. The 87, 88 bikes, not the best machines. Honda really, at that point, kind of taken control of the class, and Suzuki really kind of fell behind. In 89, they came out with an all-new RM125. This was a huge improvement in pretty much every way. A good friend of mine had the 89, and I remember riding at the time, and it just had so much snap. It was super fun to ride, really responsive. The top-end power was lacking in this first version, but for somebody at my speed at the time, it was great. I loved the instant power. There wasn't any of that waiting for it to get up on the pipe. It was really, really snappy. Just didn't have the top-end pull. That made it not the best bike for pros. I know that some of the guys like Buddy Antunez and some of these dudes had struggled to keep up with the factory Hondas at the time, but for the average rider, they were great bikes. Really good suspension, turned really well, almost turned too sharp, almost oversteer. These RMs, this is kind of the first year where they really got the reputation of being great turners. Those earlier ones were only mediocre handlers in terms of turning, but starting in 89 and moving forward, Suzuki really focused on turning, and that was kind of like their calling card, really even to this day. And this redesign in 89 was a complete clean sheet. So 91, basically the main thing that really sets this apart from the previous ones is the looks. They went with a really bold look change this year. This was the first year really where Suzuki kind of went a little nuts there. In 91, 92, the graphics were very, very, very bold and certainly different. I hated it in 1990 when I first saw this thing. I was like, what the hell? Because I love the 89 90s. I thought they were real clean looking bikes. And this 91 was definitely... it was definitely out there at the time. I think a lot of people, including myself, appreciate it now because it's so unique to the 90s, but certainly in 91 it was quite a departure. This RM125, again, the Hondas were usually considered to be kind of the best bikes in this era. They were the fastest machines, at least. Kawasaki had an all-new bike in 90, and they were kind of coming along, and Yamaha at this point in 91 was really, really, really down. The YZ125 was not very good. So this RM... These early 90s ones in particular were really great machines. They were fun to ride. Maybe not as great top-end power-wise, but for the average rider, including myself, really fun machines. Another friend of mine, a different guy, Jamie Conrad, he had a 91. I remember at the time, I think when he first got it, I had my 89 YZ125, and I could not believe how much snappier that 91 was. It just, I mean, from the second you touched the throttle, it really pulled really hard. And it was real fun to bike. Didn't pull very far. It's really abrupt, short power band, but fun to ride. I really enjoyed it. It was certainly a very fun bike to ride. I definitely liked it at the time. And as I said, this review is going to cover the 1991 Suzuki R125. But if you want to check out some others, I've done many other classic reviews on the channel. I just did a review of the 2003 KX250. I also did a look back at the November 1976 issue of Motocross Action. I went through the entire magazine from front to back, kind of talked about my recollections about it. I've done several other of those magazine reviews as well. I seem to be getting good feedback on them, so I'll be doing more in the future. I've also done retrospectives on all the 125s I own, the 250s I've owned. Basically, any kind of motocross-related content, you'll find a good deal of it here on the channel. So if you'd like to subscribe, share it on social media, add a comment and a like, I would very much appreciate it. If you'd like to support what I do here at the Motocross Vault, I do have Motocross Vault merch available. I have all kinds of stuff from masks to t-shirts to sweatshirts. I just came out with a Ricky Carmichael 2005 kind of Makita Suzuki design I really like. I'm working now on a history of KTM one where it's going to show the evolution of KTM's machines. I'm not done with that. I'm kind of in the process of that one, but I've done history of Yamaha, history of Suzuki, history of Honda as well, where I show kind of the evolution of their bikes over the time. If you'd like to check that out, they are available in my Teespring store. You'll see a link in the description below, and I'll also add a card here as well if you'd like to click on it and support what I do. So thank you very much for everything, and here is the story of the 1991 Suzuki RM125. As I said in the intro, once upon a time, Suzuki was one of the preeminent powers in the 125 class. Throughout the 70s and early 80s, no brand in motocross was as successful in the tiller division as the guys from Hamamatsu. Yellow Machines dominated the shootout standings and captured a run of 10 straight 125 World Motocross Championships from 1975 through 1985. On the track, the RM125 was the choice of novices and pros alike, and easily the most successful machine in motocross over that decade. Starting in the mid-80s, however, the fortunes of Suzuki's All-Star started to falter. Subpar power plants, old-fashioned styling, and poor reliability torpedoed the reputation of the once dominant RM125. As Honda's motocross stock ascended, Suzuki's declined, and by 1988, they were at the back of a very competitive 125 field. In 1989, Suzuki looked to right their 125 motocross ship by introducing an all-new RM125. Redesigned and reimagined from the ground up, the 89 RM125 cast aside the stodgy styling and gutless power band of 88 in favor of sexy new bodywork and a punchy new case-reed motor. The redesigned RM offered razor-sharp turning and excellent suspension performance, but it lacked the high RPM pull offered by Honda's CR125R. Overall, it was a huge improvement over recent Suzuki offerings, but it was not enough to reclaim the top spot in the 125 division. For 1990, the RM125 was back with a set of new inverted forks and some minor motor mods aimed at broadening its narrow power spread. The bike was still drop-dead gorgeous, and popular with pros due to Suzuki's generous contingency program, but the 1990 model did not offer much of a different experience than the fun but not particularly fast 89 had. For Supercross, the bike was excellent with its precise turning and quick building power. Out of turns, the RM was super responsive and very quick, but once the track opened up, its lack of stability and high RPM power began to become a hindrance. It was quick, fun, and well suspended, but once again overshadowed by the more potent machines from Kawasaki and Honda. After 2 years of offering almost good enough RMs, Suzuki came into 1991 with a plan to finally take back the crown of top 125 in the land. To do that, the engineers looked to build on the things that people already loved about the current machine. On that balance sheet were the RM's super responsive motor, ultra-sharp turning, and excellent suspension. The 2 previous years, riders had loved the RM's instant power, but fast guys lamented its relatively short pull. To address this, the engineers spec'd an all-new cylinder that featured reconfigured porting and a repositioned automatic exhaust tuning control. In addition to these changes, the RM was also slated to receive a set of new exhaust boost ports for 1991. These small ports had been a trick of savvy tuners for years, and were found on machines like Guy Cooper's national title-winning RM125. Early press releases touted the benefits of these new boost ports, and all of the launch literature given to the magazines extolled their virtues. Oddly, however, once the production RM125 made its way to dealers, the ports were missing. When Motocross Action asked American Suzuki's PR department about the missing ports, they seemed to be just as surprised as the magazines that they were not there. Apparently, someone in Japan had deleted the additional exhaust scavengers at the last minute and neglected to tell their partners that they were AWOL for 1991. Aside from the magic vanishing exhaust ports, the rest of the motor changes for 91 were very straightforward. A new head repositioned the water spigot rearward to keep it away from the hot exhaust port, and a new water pump and redesigned cooling system offered improved performance by circulating the motor's coolant through both radiators simultaneously. To improve durability, a new piston was spec'd for 1991 with a 7% higher concentration of silicone in its construction. The transmission was also beefed up for 91, with 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th gears getting a Schwarzenegger treatment. On the intake side, the RM retained the case reed arrangement it had employed since 1989 and mated that to a McCuney 35mm slingshot smoothbore carburetor. While the slingshot carb did not seem to garner much fanfare in the US, it featured prominently in other markets where the name slingshot replaced motocross on the RM's new graphics. Finishing off the motor package was a redesigned pipe and a new silencer that was lighter and shorter for 1991. On the chassis side, the RM received a more extensive overhaul for 1991. After using Kiyaba components to great success for several years, Suzuki made the bold choice to switch to Showa for 1991. At the time, this was a surprising move, as Kiyaba had been consistently outperforming its rival since the move to inverted forks in 1989. Honda Showa components were notorious for their poor performance, and adopting a version of them on the RM seemed a risky move at the time. While the new 45mm Showa forks employed on the 91 RM were the same size as the units found in the CR, they differed in their internal construction. Unlike the Honda versions, the new Suzuki Showas featured both compression and rebound adjustability, and a set of special low-friction seals and bushings to improve performance. In the rear, the 91 RM featured an all-new Showa damper with 40% more volume than 1990. This was done to improve fade resistance and ensure more consistent action throughout the moto. The new damper offered 12 inches of travel and adjustments for compression and rebound damping. In addition to the new shock, the 1991 RM received a revised swing arm that was lighter and stronger, with new bearings for the full floater linkage that promised smoother action. To better work with the new larger forks, Suzuki's engineers made several significant changes to the RM's frame for 91. The frame's down tube was strengthened by switching from round to box section tubing, and the overall geometry was altered slightly by pulling in the rake from 28 degrees to 27.45 degrees. The trail was decreased by 5 mm, and the fork's offset was reduced by 2.5 mm to further increase steering precision. In addition to the stronger frame, the new chassis featured a set of beefed-up steering head bearings to handle the loads imposed by the stiffer front forks. To increase rider comfort, foot peg width was increased by 10 mm, and a new grippier seat cover was added to help keep the pilot in place under hard acceleration. On the bodywork side, the new RM featured the same basic components as 1990, but a swap in color palette gave it a very different appearance for 1991. In 1990, the RM had featured a simple and classy blue and yellow color scheme that was very popular with riders and magazine editors alike. In use since 1984, this color combo had become a staple of the mid to late 80s Suzuki design. For 1991, Suzuki made the bold choice to ditch this iconic look in favor of a far more outlandish appearance. At the time, motocross was in a bit of a styling transition as the crazy and colorful designs common to the gear industry began to make their way onto the showroom floors as well. For Suzuki, this meant a dramatic shift in the look of all their machines for 1991. The new look RMs dropped the iconic blue frame and all-yellow bodywork of 90 in favor of a new white, orange, yellow, and gray patchwork of hues that was distinctive but less cohesive than the year before. The new RM's look certainly made the bike stand out in the showroom, but many found its cartoony appearance out of place on a serious racing machine. The odd splattered yellow and gray seat cover and giant brushstroke graphics looked more like a kindergarten art project than anything turned out by a professional design studio. The seat's appearance was probably influenced by the popular seat racing pattern designs of the time, and the switch to white for much of the bodywork was most likely an attempt to make the RM stand out more on TV, where the sport was finally gaining some mainstream exposure through ESPN. Love it or hate it, there was no denying the interest the new look generated when Suzuki debuted it at the final round of the 1990 AMA Supercross season. Despite being largely a carryover design, the 91 RM certainly looked completely new, and that was certainly part of the calculus that went into the radical shift in appearance. While the RM125's appearance was drastically changed for 1991, its basic DNA remained largely unaltered. Without the benefit of boost ports, it ran nearly identically to the year before. That meant a strong low to mid hit with lots of quick building power, but not much rev. It snapped to life very early for a 125, and climbed onto the pipe far sooner than revvers like the CR125R. The power was super responsive, and the bike could be ridden without frying the clutch plates out of every corner. This made the RM easy to ride and very novice-friendly, but it limited its appeal to more experienced 125 pilots. As in the past, the RM could be happily revved if you pushed it, but the power tapered off appreciably past the mid-range. Because of this, it was necessary to shift quite often to keep the RM in its relatively narrow sweet spot. Thankfully, the RM's transmission and clutch were excellent and far more willing participants than much of the competition. While the RM's power band was not as long-pulling as the ones found on the Kawasaki and Honda, many riders picked it as the best overall motor package available in 1991. It was snappy, quick, and responded very well to easy power upgrades like pipes and reed valves. As long as you did not try to ring it to the stops, it was super fun and very effective. On the chassis side, the RM remained the sharpest handling package in the 125 class. No matter the surface or the style of turn, the RM was ready to dive to the inside and stick like glue. On tight tracks, the RM had no equal, and no other machine in the class was going to cut inside the yellow splattered wonder. With its super responsive motor, the RM was prone to wheeling on exit, but that made it easy to loft the front end over whoops and other on-track obstacles. In the air, the RM was very maneuverable and easy to flick around, but that snappy power also caused the bike to fly front end high at times. Once you rode it for a short time, it was easy to account for this, but riders switching between machines noted it at the time. At speed, the RM continued to be far busier than any of the 125 competition. Unlike the CR, which developed a case of wobbles under deceleration, the RM exhibited its wandering behavior under power. At speed, the bike felt short, twitchy, and generally unsettled under the rider. Longtime Suzuki pilots got used to this busy behavior, but riders switching to the RM from other machines were often disconcerted by the bike's lack of a planted feel. Overall, it was an excellent handling package for tight and twisty courses with lots of jumps, but not the hot setup for a Glen Helen practice day in July. On the suspension front, Suzuki's Showa Gamble turned out to be a bit of a mixed bag in 1991. The new 45mm front forks performed very well and were light years better than the Showa units found on the Honda. The spring rates and damping were spot on for the ARM's target demo, and their performance was easy to dial in with the available compression and rebound adjustments. There was none of the mid-stroke harshness that Honda riders had been dealing with since 1989, and they were easily the best Showa forks offered since 1987. In the rear, the new Showa damper proved slightly less effective than the forks. In the rough, it was choppy and unwilling to follow small undulations in the terrain. This only exacerbated the RM's busy feel at speed, and made the bike a real handful in bombed-out high-speed sections. On big hits and in deep whoops, it worked pretty well, but the Showa shock never felt as plush as the 1990 Kiyama unit had. For fast guys it worked well, but riders of lesser skill missed the 1990's smoother action. On the detailing front, the RM was considered good for its time. Riders loved the bike's comfortable ergonomics, although pilots over 6 feet were likely to find themselves somewhat cramped. The new seat cover was something of an eyesore to many, but the new material was grippier, more durable, and slightly more water resistant than the old design. While most people liked the feel of the RM switchgear, the levers were far less durable than the forged units found on the Honda. A crash that would leave you with a slightly bent clutch lever on a CR was likely to leave you with a stub of a lever on the RM. The bars, chain, and sprockets were all also junk, but this was par for the course from the Japanese in 1991. While the graphics were polarizing, at least they were durable. The shroud graphics stayed in place even for knee brace wearers, but the side panel accents were most likely going to be removed for numbers anyway. The new piston and rings offered a slightly better life for 1991, but the RM continued to feel worn out faster than most of the other competition. The power valve was also in constant danger of being gummed up due to its shared lubrication with the transmission oil. Once the oil came into contact with the red-hot exhaust valve, it turned into a thick goo that coated and fouled the mechanism. The transmission was also prone to running low due to a vent hose incorporated into the power valve design. Rerouting the drain chute upwards helped somewhat, but checking the oil level regularly and staying on top of the power valve's maintenance was a must if you wanted to prevent a costly failure. If you kept an eye on all of this, the RM was fun and reliable, but if you neglected it and treated it like an XR200, it was likely to leave you stranded on the side of the track. Overall, the mildly refreshed RM125 turned out to be one of the most competitive machines of 1991. Despite its relative lack of peak horsepower and controversial looks, the bike was popular with riders of all skill levels. It was fun to ride, ultra quick, and razor sharp. The new suspension proved that Showa had not forgotten how to build a decent set of forks, and the mildly massaged motor made the case for instant snap over endless wail. For high-speed work, there were better machines available, but for the majority of 125 pilots, the RM offered more than enough performance to pull you to the front. So there you have it. That's a look back at the 1991 Suzuki RM125, a machine that was probably much more different looking than it really was different. There really was only made mainly minor refinements for 1991, but it was still a very competitive machine. Certainly one of the best 125s of 1991, and depending on who you were and what your skill level was, it may have been the best bike. I had a 1990 CR, and it was super fast, but the power band was really up high. There wasn't a lot of torque down low. I mean, I remember riding this RM125 my buddy had compared to like my CR, and it was such a night and day difference in terms of responsiveness. The RM, you crack the throttle and it jumped, and the CR just kind of went brrr, and then it would and take off. So yeah, it took a little bit more to get it going. On top end, of course, the CR kind of walked away, but at my skill level, the RM was actually easier to ride. Now, I did prefer the way the Honda handled that RM. It kind of felt like it had a hinge in it. It always felt like it oversteered a little bit too much, like you're way over the front of the bike. And sometimes it felt like the front wheel was doing something the rest of the bike wasn't doing. All these RMs are like that. They tend to oversteer a little bit, and depending on if you're not used to, if you jump off another bike, they can be a little sketchy at first. They just never have a very planted feel, and it wasn't like the Hondas really did either. They had more of a, I guess they head shake more coming down from speed. The RM just felt like it always just kind of danced around. It was just a different kind of a machine. Super fun to ride though. They really great for jumping. I remember that. It was so easy to get jumps in and out of turns. You just like crack the throttle and it came on the power band so quickly. And on my little track in the woods there where it was really tight, basically there's not much running anything out there, and it was super easy to get up and over stuff where my CR I might have to go outside and kind of fry the clutch up to it. That RM you could take the inside, just grab a handful and it would clear it easy. So it's a super fun bike, and definitely one of the most controversial looking, but performance-wise, a very excellent little machine. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, like I said, I have many other classic reviews here for you to check out. If you'd like to support the channel, I do have merch, as I said, available in our Teespring store. You can find it at teespring.com. I'll, again, put a link in the description below. And if you could like, subscribe, share on social media, tell your friends about the channel, help it grow, I'd very much appreciate it. Until we meet again, this is Tony Blazer from the Motocross Vault. Keep the rubber side down. Peace.